Welcome to Life Unrestricted.
This is your show if you're sick of living a life controlled by food and exercise rules, and if you're ready to learn how to accept yourself and enjoy the heck out of life. My gig is about body image, femininity, self-worth, and resilience. Come on, let's walk side by side as we slowly step out of restriction misery and unlock our true selves.
Your host, Merritt Boxler, is a former national radio DJ, freelance journalist, speaker, and writer with a passion to make women feel good in their bodies. This is a show brought to you live from Switzerland.
Hey, sweet radicals. It's me again, your self-acceptance companion. Thank you for letting me be in your ears and hearts, dear ones. And bringing those podcast episodes to you also helps me tremendously to see where I'm currently at. Because when I sit down to think about what I'm going to say, I usually find out pretty quickly where the pebble is in my shoe. And believe me, there is many a pebble in my shoes. And some of them I get to detect when I do this. As it's not just me posting great insights from all of my awesome guests, but also me doing sort of an audio journaling thing. I noticed, for example, that I'm great at giving advice, great at being kind to others, great at reminding you to be compassionate with yourself. And I truly feel the truth when I remind you that you are a badass of a person that is inherently enough as you are. But, and here's the great but, I can't help but noticing how much less great I am at applying all this to myself. As I told you in the episode before last, the one where I went against my inner gremlin that tells me that I have to release a full episode every week, no matter how tired I am, or no matter if I even feel energized enough to record an interview. I battle this perfectionistic gremlin voice in a lot of areas of my life, to the point where I can get pretty OCD with stuff. And I notice that whenever I do something, this gets to be sort of my new standard, and I compare myself to my, quote, best output, whatever that might mean even. And that is something that happens so subconsciously that I'm often not even aware of it. And I'm the one who preaches self-awareness like a broken record. And as I said in my episode with the wonderful Jennifer Rollins, which you should absolutely listen to, it's number 52. As I said in my episode with her, I didn't consciously realize, for example, that I was doing more and more exercise again, since it increased so sneakily, so slowly, nothing about it felt weird at all. Or how suddenly I wasn't making much of an effort to eat during the day again, because my daily evening binges didn't decrease right away. And it just feels safer to listen to this eating disorder voice that is so loud. By the way, me telling you this is progress, because I feel very ashamed of these facts. And I feel ashamed that these behaviors have been there for way over a decade. Some of my behaviors have been there all my life, almost all my life. And even though I know so much more than I did a year ago, I've come to realize that, at least for me, it doesn't seem to be enough to intellectually know about some necessary recovery steps, because even though I had hoped that it was just a matter of, understanding how to do it and then, just doing it. Quick and dirty, no biggie. Ha ha. What a humbling experience to see that, nope, recovery really doesn't work that way. At first, I was beating myself up and thought, how arrogant of me to think that I was just going to waltz through this. How arrogant. Typical. But of course, that was just another trick of my inner gremlin, because even though everyone told me that the will to fully recover takes a long time to develop, and that recovery very often takes more than one attempt, especially after literally a lifetime of having a severely disordered relationship with food and exercise, and that relapsing is part of the process for most people. Even though I knew all that, I had somehow let my inner gremlin set the expectation for me that I was going to be different, right? That for me, it was about gathering all the recovery information that I could get, share it with the world, and, well, as I said, just doing what all the great experts said that you heard on this show, and that anything less than just doing it like that would make me a grand failure. Well, guess what? That's exactly how I started feeling. Because why the hell was I taking steps backwards instead of forwards? Why was I feeling so much fear? Why did I suddenly feel insecure to even invite guests on my show? Because wasn't I a fraud for providing people with such good advice and not being able to follow through with most of this stuff? I started to feel like maybe I should abandon this podcast project because I wasn't acing the process. Well, before I do that and leave recovery podcasts to other people, I'd rather face the gremlin and tell you what's up. What's up is that it's hard for me to admit that while I was making good steps pretty fast in the beginning and had quite some momentum going, I got sidetracked by my eating disorder thoughts again. Those thoughts that I often don't recognize as eating disorder thoughts because I've had them for almost all my life. So I'm trying to be more compassionate with myself and understand that it would have been close to impossible for me to just, intellectually gather all the good advice and then just kick my eating disorder to the curb. I do realize more and more that I feel pretty powerless with a lot of stuff and that I am going to need more help with that. At least I opened up to my therapist about it, and while she's not an eating disorder therapist per se and doesn't know anything about health at every size, like everyone else in this country, at least she is helping me reducing my exercise again, and we're working on why I took steps back. And just as I said in my previous solo episode, all I suddenly felt was this weird increasing pressure to perform on all levels, even though there was nobody outside of myself putting any pressure on. And I now think it was shame. Again, shame for not being the hero I would like to be. And this shame kept me from easing up on the pressure I put on myself, as well as from reaching out to future guests. So all of a sudden, there were all these feelings of anxiety and pressure inside of me. And even though this, of course, felt horrible, it felt equally horrible to ease up on all these self-imposed rules, as if I wasn't allowed to. So things started to get worse again. Can you relate to that? So if you're going through a hard time, I feel you. In a world that does its damnedest to convince us that we're not pretty or skinny or young or happy enough or desirable or rich enough, it's literally an uphill battle to reclaim our own truths, our trust in ourselves and our trust in our bodies. When all around us people are engaging in mostly self-derogatory diet talk, when we hear derogatory comments about people in bigger bodies, when everybody is trying to sell us the new magic idea to finally crack the skinny and happy code, when people are food policing each other's eating choices, and when people feel like they need to belong to some eating tribe or other to give them a sense of belonging and identity. To sum it up, when we live in a world that has its own eating disorder and is clearly promoting disordered eating and exercise behaviors, it's an act of extreme badassery to recover. And as for me, I'm learning more and more about my ways with food and over-exercising, the purpose of it, the fear behind it, my own loss aversion, for example, and also my own cowardice. Or maybe that's too judgy of a choice of words. Maybe it's really just fear. Fear of being left behind, fear of losing my identity, or a sense of false control, giving it up. And I often feel like with dieting, yo-yo dieting, or with disordered eating, and especially with eating disorder, it's a little bit like this. Imagine yourself way before you ever got the idea that you needed to be fixed or that you needed to fix your body, living in peace wherever you lived. And as you grew up, you heard all those messages. You saw all those images and beauty magazines, ads, celebrities, and you started to compare your body to their bodies and found yours to be inadequate. Maybe even without consciously realizing it, and also because everybody else around you seemed to do the same. So you learned the insidious diet culture messages that tell us that we need to become skinnier or have more muscle tone or less wrinkles or perkier boobs, whatever the message is. It basically says that we need to take on this body project in order to be happy. I like to imagine this as sort of a siren's call, calling to us about this beautiful sunny island, the island of skinniness, where you would be so happy and so popular, so successful and carefree. And you cannot resist the lure, this wish to want to live out on this faraway island belonging to the happy, skinny crowd. And you start to swim away from your body's home on the mainland. You don't want to feel ashamed of your body in this diet culture world I described before, surrounded by stupid beauty magazines that poison your brain with enhanced images and twisted messages about how you should love yourself, but only if you look a certain way. Surrounded by an entire industry that is making insane profits off of you buying into their latest promise of finally bringing you to happy and confidence island. If only you do this or buy that or cut out this food group or join that food tribe, it's always the same. The packaging gets a little more tricky to recognize, because said industry knows how our minds work and how malleable we are, despite our belief that we are not. So, of course, in such a world, it's highly likely that you end up feeling lost, feeling bad about yourself, looking for something to hold on to, because you think you need outside approval, feeling confused as how to feel like you're good enough, or belonging to the rest of the, quote, cool kids club. So there you are. And then you hear this siren's call. Imagine some fairy coming along. A mean, sinister trickster, really, but cleverly disguised as a kind fairy. And this fairy holds out their hand to you and promises to bring you to Skinny Island, commonly sold, as I said, as the happiness and self-confidence island. And of course you do as anyone would do. You grab onto that hand, feeling like, oh, salvation is around the corner, great. And of course you're more than willing to give this journey all of your effort. And so off you go, traveling to the Skinny Island, or Skinnier Island, you get the idea, the diet island. At first you feel safe there. You feel like, oh, you have solid ground underneath your feet. Maybe you even feel like a goddamn conqueror. Because, hey, you made it here. You're not lost anymore, right? It might be that this dieting stuff makes you feel great at first because diets work in the short term. And because in a fucked up society like the one we're living in terms of dieting and beauty ideal messages we get, losing weight, no matter by what means, will inevitably bring you compliments. And they do feel like a drug. Dieting, in fact, is like a drug. We know they don't work, but the shitty thing about them is, as I said, that the first time you try, they do work. They seem to be the solution to the problem, the ticket, to this happy island. And after a while, we are so deep in that we fail to recognize that the so-called solution itself turns into a whole world of problems and hurts. So the skinny island. For a little while, it really felt like the place to survive and thrive in. So you tend to overlook some serious downfalls. You're still so glad that you survived the state of feeling lost and inadequate that you fail to recognize that this island is not at all making you happy, nor confident for that matter. There is no real meaning to your life anymore except to actually make it through the day, counting calories, tracking your every step, exercising, worrying about food. And maybe you find some sad meaning in the way you bond with other weight-suppressed islanders over how this body is still not good enough and how we should maybe even work harder to try to keep this body in check. Without ever questioning the promise of this happy, skinny confidence island, we kind of silently agree that there are now only much fewer items of food available for us on this island, and that there basically never really is enough. So you end up being obsessed with thinking about how to feed yourself. You find yourself dreaming of the mainland you once lived on, a time when there were brownies and pasta and vegetables and juicy fruit, and there were soups and breads and waffles and jams. But now, there's nothing much except for the occasional coconut and some green leaves, and rule signs everywhere. But we get so busy complying to all of that we get used to the other islanders talking and obsessing about the same stuff as we do. And we fail to realize that there really is not much happiness to be found on this island. No fun, really. No real belonging either. And certainly no peace and no abundance. Nothing. Metaphorically speaking, there's not even fresh water here. Only salt water all around us, so that we find ourselves putting up with all sorts of misery, and speaking from a soul's perspective, we're basically having to run around with our tongues hanging out when it's raining to keep minimalistically hydrated, right? All the while still believing that we probably wouldn't have been able to find a better island for ourselves, or thinking that maybe we don't deserve a better way or place to live, and somehow at the same time longing to go back to where we came from, yet feeling so afraid to go back there. So we end up feeling unhappy, trapped, and at the same time confused and lost, and feeling like it's all our fault, that maybe the reason why we haven't quite found this promised happiness yet is only because maybe we haven't looked hard enough yet. Maybe we haven't tried all the places on this island yet. Maybe we haven't tried hard enough. So this, to me, sums up pretty accurately how dieting and disordered eating or exercise compulsions or really an eating disorder feel like. At one point, all of these things might have been the only things that we knew how to feel safe with, or the only way we knew how to pursue happiness with, because, we all were promised safety and happiness. Yet, the one thing you thought would protect you, or get you love, or make you happier, or more popular, or at least more confident, ended up being the exact thing that took all of that away from us and made us nothing but obsessed. And in comes the idea of recovery, the hope that there is a better way to live, Because really, this is mere survival. All for the sake of having a body that was promised to bring us happiness. And here we are on this island. And maybe we have even tried to leave. Maybe many times. But we got scared when the sea got too rocky. It might be that you experienced reactive binges or weight gain. That's what I mean by rocky seas. And you got scared, blamed yourself, and didn't know any other solution than to swim back to this diet and eating disorder island. And who knows, maybe you never even tried to leave because you were too horrified to find nothing else, to drown out at sea. Maybe you keep staring out at the sea, longingly hoping to be back on Main Island, not having a clue as how you should make it back there. Or maybe you keep thinking that tomorrow you will start swimming back. But tomorrow always turns into the new tomorrow, and you can't seem to bring yourself to really do it. I get all that. So recovery, or the idea of recovery, feels a bit like this for me. I'm standing on this diet hell island, looking out to the ocean, and I'm hearing people call to me, recovery people, saying that I can make it safe back to mainland, that I can safely leave this island and believe in my own swimming abilities, and that there will be a much better, much more fertile, much more fun, much more interesting, much more fulfilled, and much more livable place for me to live on. But that in order to get there, I have to go through the very phase I was trying to avoid. The phase of surrendering control and trusting the process. The phase of being all at sea. The phase of not knowing where I'm headed. And realizing that I did start swimming before, that I was determined to leave before, and that somehow fear got me to turn around. The eating disorder voice was so sneakily angel-like that I followed it back again. But where did it get me? Stuck on the island again. And realizing that I have to keep being very vigilant to the eating disorder voice's tricks and tones, to realize how seductive this eating disorder voice really is, how easy it lures us back into old behaviors that promise safety, and to know two things. A, we can swim. We might return to the island, but we're swimming better, and each time we leave the island, we go further out. We might return to the island again, but we can swim, and we're going to make it. We will make it back to mainland. And B, asking for help is not weakness. It's pure strength. That's what I found out when I suddenly realized that I had been swimming in the wrong direction again. This time, I won't try to just do it on my own and put all this pressure on myself. This time, I'm going to ask my therapist for more help with this, because we should never make the mistake and underestimate the amount of power our disordered thoughts have, and never underestimate the amount of power this society's body negative messages and images have on us. We are human beings. We cannot help but being influenced by what we're exposed to. So we do deserve all the support we can get. We all deserve to swim back. And we have to swim ourselves. But we deserve all the help there is. And there's a lot of help and support out there. All we need to do is say, hey, I need help. And then you can start swimming again. Further out this time. No matter how many attempts it takes. Recovery is worth it. And you got this, badass. Number one step, realizing that staying on this island is only going to lead to nothing but a tragically misspent life. And this world needs you. The full, unabashed version of yourself, the whole you. You are so needed here. Thank you for existing, lovely radical. Thank you for fighting alongside me. Thank you for not giving up on yourself. And while I'm at it, let me spread some more gratitude. Lovely Abigail and lovely Trish, you are my super champions this week. Thank you for becoming patrons of my show. This really means everything. And as you know, I love bringing my work to all of you, and I feel so very happy to see that you, Abigail and Trish, you are honoring my work by supporting me on Patreon. Because this support on Patreon is really what keeps me going. And it's also what gives me the financial breathing space I need to be able to keep producing the show. So by you helping me, you are helping so many other people out there. Did you realize that? So to all of you out there who are listening, do you find this thing you're hearing worthy of support? Do you find this message in any way helpful? Do you enjoy me being your headphone friend? Look, your support would mean the world to me. So please check out my page on patreon.com. You can find it at patreon.com/lifeunrestricted. And that's where you can make a pledge, help support the show. And of course, always without any strings attached. So patreon.com/lifeunrestricted is where it's at. And thank you so much for your support, radicals. You're all great. And for those of you who don't have any money, please show me some love on iTunes by leaving a 5-star rating and review, because that helps a lot of other people too. Because they might find the show easier because it gets ranked higher. So you're actively helping other people as well. And iTunes is a bit weird with leaving reviews. It's not as easy as it might sound. It's not as hard either, but you know, the way it works is you have to enter Life Unrestricted in the search bar. Whether you subscribe to my podcast or not, doesn't matter. You have to take, the long way around and type in Life Unrestricted. And then when you find the show, you can click on the big image there. And then you get a selection of tabs, one of which is ratings and reviews. And then you can, leave the stars and write a review on there. That's how this jumping through iTunes hoops thing works. And your reviews mean a lot and they change a lot. So thank you for your effort. You're all great. I'm looking forward to next week already. We will have the great Michelle May on the show from Eat What You Love, Love What You Eat. And I'm so looking forward to that. Until then, lovely radicals, take care of yourselves.
This was today's dose of badassery from Life Unrestricted. Find the show notes with links to everything we mentioned in this episode over at lifeunrestricted.org. And if this show is making you feel good, awesome, make sure to subscribe and please let others feel good too. By leaving a 5-star review on iTunes, you'll help make this show more visible and therefore more accessible for others. You're the best. Thanks.